Alright, hello cadre. So today I'm going to be just kind of recording my honing process for you guys. I know Sharps asked to see kind of what I do for this, so I figured I'd show you guys. I'll start off with kind of my setup here, my equipment. So tile down just to kind of keep everything a little bit tidier. Keep the space nice and dry because this is going to get some water all over the place. Just a cheap spray bottle to wet down the stones a little bit as I go. My stones themselves, I've got a set of Nortons. So we've got the 1K and 220 combo. That's my bevel setter. Mostly just use the 1K on that. The 220 is really just if I need to really like work on taking a chip out or something like that. For the most part, I need to reprofile something. And then I've got the Norton 4K 8K stone. And those are kind of my main stones. They get the job done for me. They come in these nice cases for storage, plus they've got these little feet on the top so that you can put the stone right on top of it and use that to hold it while you're doing your honing. So that's pretty nice. And then for my other stones, I've got this small little purple Welsh slate. I don't use that all the time, just kind of, I feel like it's in between the 8K and my usual finishing hone. So I may not even use this today, but I'll just kind of show it to you guys. It's got some nice color to it when it's wet. But it's got some inclusions on the other side and whatnot, but probably won't really use that. I keep this towel over here just in case I need to kind of wipe some stuff off the razors when I'm honing, so I can kind of see where I'm at. And then this, posted some pictures a little while back, but this is my finisher, some sort of stone from up in Canada, and it's nice, pretty. It's very smooth, gives a very nice smooth edge for finishing. So, and I keep it just wrapped up in the bubble wrap that it kind of came shipped to me in, just to keep it safe. Beyond that, let's see, I've got my DMTs here. I've got a, let's see, I think the big one is a fine, the little one is a coarse, and those really, for the most part, if I have a really stubborn razor that has like a defect I need to work on, I'll use these a little bit, but mostly these are just for lapping my stones because they're super flat. So I know that if I lap onto these, they are going to be very, very flat, and it's a nice, nice smooth surface. It's not going to like rub off into the grit of the stones and ruin them or anything like that. Beyond that, I've got a pencil if I need to do the grid pattern lapping on my stones to make sure I'm getting a nice flat surface, and then a marker for just verifying if I'm having trouble getting a bevel set. Helps me verify if I'm getting all the way to the edge on that bevel set. Some electrical tape. I do one layer of tape on pretty much every razor that I hone just to protect the spine, especially if you got ones like today where it's got some nice nice work on the spine you don't want to ruin. And it'll change the angle just a smidge, not a whole lot, but sometimes it can provide just that little bit of a less harsh and more smooth shave as well. And then on my finishing, right before I'm totally done, I will add a second layer of tape and do about 10 very, very light laps on the finishing hone to just kind of knock off some of the really harshness, and it gives just a really smooth kind of secondary bevel that's just barely there. And that seems to be really nice for me. And then one of the most important tools is actually a little jeweler's loop. So this one's got 30 and 60 magnification. It's got lights on it so that you can light up that edge, and then you can see what you're doing on those bevels, and it is really, really helpful. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get things going here. Pull out the 1K stone. And get this going. So today we are honing the Art of Shaving Dovo that I got in the PIF from Sharps. And I've shaved with it once, and it was okay. It was definitely a usable edge, but it wasn't the most comfortable shave. And I feel like I could get a little bit sharper with it. So we are gonna be doing that, and this one has that really nice gold on the spine, so I definitely want to tape over that to protect it from the stones and not wear that away. So that being said, I'm going to get this taped up and we'll get going here in just a second. Okay, so there's the spine all taped up. See what that looks like. And yeah, so I do my honing basically the same way I do my stropping, but backwards. I go back and forth. I know some people like to go all one direction and then for a certain number of strokes, and then and then flip it over, go the other direction. I just feel like I get a little bit better result personally going back and forth. And it's kind of a lot like everything else. You're going to have to find out what works for you if you're going to try this. But yeah, so I'm going to get this going. I'm also going to be probably practicing some, see what I can do in the editing of this video. So I may put some music over this and speed it up or something. So I probably won't be talking the whole time. But yeah, so I'll get this going. I'll start off on the 1K, get this a little bit wet first. And then, oh yeah, also when I'm starting off with something like this where I'm going to kind of redo the bevel, I will just lightly run that a couple of times over the corner to kind of kill the edge, and then we'll kind of see if I can. Yeah, so it's not cutting any hairs now. So that edge is officially dead, and I'm starting totally fresh. Here we go. And big thing is to just not put a bunch of pressure, let mostly the weight of the blade, and then the only kind of pressure I'm really using is to make sure that the edge remains in contact with the surface of the hone to kind of counterbalance these scales more or less. Alright, so now I'm going to refresh the tape. That way I've got that same starting thickness. I'll refresh the tape and I'll switch to the 4K stone, and at this point I am basically just going to be polishing and refining that edge up. I mean, this is a pretty minor honing job. The geometry appears to be pretty good. Just needed to kind of get that edge a little bit more refined and sharp. So I will get the tape changed out and swap the stones, and I'll be right back. Okay, got the tape refreshed, and I meant to film it. I'll film it when I flip the stone over, but I always kind of give at least a light lapping to the stones before I use them, just to make sure they're good and true and flat. I don't do anything too drastic. I don't usually go as far as doing the pencil grid test unless I just feel like something is off or I've been using them really heavily. But yeah, so we're going to do the 4K, and like I said, this is mostly, at this point, just going to be kind of polishing and refining that edge, getting it a little bit sharper, a little bit smoother, a little less jagged along that edge, because really what you're doing is you're just getting all those little serrations to be nice and small but lined up and even. So we'll get going on this, and yeah, I'll see you when it's time to switch to the 8K. Okay, so that's going to do it for the 4K. I did about, I think, around 25 total laps on that. Just the last few, just to kind of clean up a few spots that were almost good, but not quite. The grind on this is not, it's pretty decent, but there's a few places where it's not quite as good as it should be. So I just wanted to make sure I got my bevel looking good all the way up and down both sides. So looks good under the loop. So I'm going to swap out my tape again, and then I will show you guys what I do to lap the stones when I come back. Alright, tape is refreshed, and now I'll show you what I do for the lapping real quick. So that's pretty wet from sitting underneath that. So then I take my fine DMT, which is also the big one, and just let that sit just the weight of the DMT, and just kind of lightly swirl that around just a little bit. And then they suction on pretty good, since it's two very flat surfaces at this point. And the DMT is heavy, so you can see took just a little bit off, and I'll just rinse that off the DMT real quick. Got my big bucket of water over here to keep the stones in, the 2 synthetic stones in, so because they kind of absorb water. So I usually soak them for at least an hour before I use them. I know a lot of people that hone on a pretty regular basis even tend to keep like buckets with water, and their hones just stay in there, and they can keep a little bit of something in there to keep nasty stuff from growing. But I don't use these quite often enough to try to justify that. Plus they tend to travel with me for this. So okay, so time for the 8K. So for somebody just starting out, you can definitely call it good after this 8K. I definitely did for probably the first year that I did honing. I got myself to an 8K edge, and once I felt like I could consistently get a really good, comfortable shave off the 8K, that's when I moved on to getting a nicer finishing hone to really just smooth out those edges and get them really nice and sharp and comfortable. But you can definitely get a very comfortable shave off of an 8K. Like I said, I did it for a year and it was just fine. And on a couple of other forums, I've seen threads where, it was kind of like a challenge to, only go up to an 8K and get a good, comfortable shave off that. And maybe you could use a pasted strop or something like that before your regular strop if you wanted to refine just a little bit. But mostly it was supposed to just be a 8K strop and shave. And you can definitely do it for sure and get a nice, comfortable shave. So I'll get this going, probably do, I'm going to guess I'll probably do about 20 or so laps on this, and call it good. We'll see how it feels though. So I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so I think that'll do it for the 8K. So it seems like I'm getting a nice smooth edge on that, so I am going to go ahead and refresh the tape one more time, and we'll move on to, I think we're going to go straight to the finishing stone. So I will be right back. Okay. Alright, so this is the finishing stone, like I said earlier. It's very hard, super smooth, and like I said, it gets me some pretty good results. So, and like I said before, I do one layer of tape. I'll probably do 15-20 laps with the one layer of tape, and then I'll add one more layer of tape and do like 10 very light laps to kind of get that tiny little secondary bubble. It's almost like giving it like the tiniest possible convex edge. So it stands up a little bit easier, or yeah, it's a little bit tougher of an edge, stick around a little bit longer, and it just kind of smooths things out just that little bit usually. So we'll get that going. Okay, so that should do it. That's basically my process at that point. Looks like I've got a really nice, super shiny, almost mirror bevel on this thing. Something to note, I have a really bad habit of when I'm going and I pick up and I flip the blade under with the edge kind of going towards the hone. You really should flip the other way. I just, for whatever reason, it kind of developed as a bad habit, so to mitigate that, I make sure to lift like higher, decently high off the hone so that when I'm flipping underneath it doesn't contact. That's just a bad habit. I don't recommend that because it's a good way to get most of the way through a honing session and ding your edge and have to start completely over. I've done that once or twice, but obviously it hasn't bothered me enough to make me, fix that bad habit yet. So maybe if I honed more often, I would work on that, but hasn't been too much of an issue. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you on the Cadre.